Developed by From Software and published by Activision and released in 2019 for the Sony PlayStation 4, personal computer and Xbox One was that of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. The game was highly praised by critics as well as gamers for authentic depictions of Japanese culture from the period of the game that was set into being that of the Sengoku period. An interesting theory had it that relating to the experience of the game, some players mentioned that it was slightly more difficult, even frustrating for casual gamers, in the fact that the difficulty was so apparent during gameplay that the dynamics of the game couldn't be truly understood or even performed correctly by some players in order to literally enjoy or truly experience the game. Speculation further had it that due to the mechanics of the game in terms of parrying, blocking, dodging or evading, with relying on these skills in terms of swordsmanship, as well as skill in when to use these abilities, with items even properly leveling up, all combined with patience if done incorrectly, it was theoretically very hard or even impossible to play the game. With these details in mind, found speculation had it that the Phantom Butterfly, or known in English translations as Lady Butterfly, was the first real challenge to players of the game. From Software is notoriously known for having game progression in a somewhat complex way, as at times simply passing through an area and encountering a boss to defeat or kill isn't likely or exactly as easy as others might expect with other video game franchises. Depending on the situation, certain bosses have to be avoided until later in the game when the player has enough experience, abilities, health, or circumstantial details to properly beat the boss. Despite the fact that the boss was technically an optional encounter, the consensus were that most thought the boss to be a must-kill to progress through the game. When Sekiro was first released, there were infamous examples of players being unable to kill the Phantom Butterfly, no matter what they did during the fight, and the consensus were among most players is that she was a highly difficult boss fight encounter, difficult enough to the extent that some players might even give up the game and abandon it due to the clear difficulty and overlying frustrations at this single boss fight. Reception on media and even media to the game made fun of the fact that the Phantom Butterfly was that difficult and became a representation of what the game itself was, being that of a niche game with a high difficulty, which for some players was perfectly fine, but for other players needed to use an in-depth knowledge of how to handle the game's dynamics. It all came down to the experience of fighting against the Phantom Butterfly, which arguably influenced the entire perception of the game with some players. Sometimes a character can be forgotten due to the fact that they were so frustrating that they made some people abandon a video game's completion entirely.